Hi there, Jan Hall from Folk Roots Radio. It's great to be back for another Folk Roots Radio Live, an opportunity to listen in as I interview people for Folk Roots Radio. We started it a few weeks ago. I think we've got 5 that we've done so far. And, I do interviews on a regular basis, and I've been thinking for years, it's like, wouldn't it be great if people could listen in while we're doing the interview? Well, you can now do that. So it's great to have you join me. I also want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified about all our upcoming live interviews. Now, coming up, we're going to be joined by up-and-coming Irish singer-songwriter Colm Gavin. Colm's first 2 albums have been very well received in his native Ireland, and he's now getting significant airplay across North America. And he has a wonderful new piano-driven EP that's coming. So lots to talk about. But before we get to the interview, let's check out one of his latest singles. This is Colm Gavin with the beautiful Your Little Corner of the Moon. Thanks for joining us on Folk Roots Radio Live.
If there are 7 wonders in this world, then you must be the 8th. She said, I only ordered rice. Now it seems there's cheese here on my plate. I said, I guess that's not the kind of thing that you'd hear on a first date. But if I didn't say it now, I never will. She had the kind of eyes that poets from Alaska write about, that could freeze you with one glance, but that you'd burn inside without. And as her feet would glide down Main Street, all the boys would scream and shout. I hope there's someone out there screaming for her still. And all the girls eat mashed potatoes as I swallow humble pie. A problem shared is a problem still. I don't need to tell you why. Her cage door's standing open, but she won't rest until she flies to her little corner of the moon. It was late September, I recall. There was gold beneath our feet. And by circumstance, I learned to dance in her arms out in the street. And the fragrance of her hair gave off the taste of something sweet. I'd have stayed right there forever if I could. She said that love is like a lottery as the red lights fade to blue. I don't know what it is I'm searching for, but tonight perhaps it's you. Still, I don't want the kind of heart that sticks to my shirt sleeves like glue. And then she kissed me like she thought I understood that all the girls eat mashed potatoes as I swallow humble pie. A problem shared is a problem still. I don't need to tell you why. Her cage door's standing open, but she won't rest until she flies to her little corner of the moon. I wanted to say from the time we started, I'm not only here till the rain has parted. I'll always be true and I'm open-hearted, and it's open just for you and everything you do. If you can do that too. Oh, but she just sighed and said, think of us as passing ships that were never meant to sail. There's such a high price for the quiet life, and my freedom's not for sale. I'm like a wild wind that can't reduce itself to a passing summer gale. If this were any other time, for you I would. It's only 3 weeks since she left, but there's a cold chill in the air. There's not a trace of her on Main Street, but I still see her everywhere. And Mama told me she'll come back, son, if you just act like you don't care. Still I know this time goodbye meant bye for good. And all the girls eating mashed potatoes as I swallow humble pie. A problem shared is a problem still, I don't need to tell you why. But every night it seems in my wildest dreams, it is always she and I, in her little corner of the moon. In her little corner of the moon.
That is the wonderful Colm Gavin from Ireland. Colm is a fabulous young songwriter. He has been around the scene actually a long time in Ireland, and he's now getting significant amounts of airplay in North America. That track was entitled Your Little Corner of the Moon, filmed on the beautiful pianos at Thornton Pianos in Ireland as part of their Superior sessions. And that track will also be on Colm's new EP. It's entitled The 1992 Tapes. I heard another track, which we're going to play at the end of this interview. It's actually really good, so hopefully you'll stay with us for that. And we're pleased to welcome to the show Colm Gavin. How are you doing today, Colm?
John, pleasure. How are you doing? Good to be here with you.
Great to have you join us. You know, I just absolutely loved that song when you first sent it to me. I have mentioned on a previous interview, probably a few times, that I'm a real sucker for fabulous piano singer-songwriters. Now, I know you play guitar as well, but that was really beautiful. And that was from a special series. I think the Superior sessions that were put on by Thornton Pianos. Is that right?
Yeah, just towards the tail end of 2020, the amazing folks at Thornton Pianos put together what they call the Superior sessions. So they invited a couple of Irish artists who were sort of, in their terms, making waves on the scene, and invited us to come in sort of in a very stripped back acoustic environment to choose a piano and to sit and to, you would pick two songs, preferably of your own, although some people did do covers and there's no harm in that. But you mentioned like you've got a bit of a penchant for the acoustic piano balladeer. And I grew up loving the music of Tom Waits and Randy Newman. And so there's always been something about just the voice and the piano that I've always found really captivating, and just couldn't pass up the invitation really to join the guys at Thornton's.
Well, you did a fine job. And so the Superior sessions, are they, I know that they're available on YouTube. If people go to YouTube, they can check out not just yours, but sessions from other people. And is there going to be an album of those as well? Is that the plan?
And there is presently. And from what I hear from Alan Thornton, he tells me that they've actually sold the whole of the first batch of physical copies. I think he's looking into, it was spoken about doing a vinyl at some point as well, but all of the CDs from the first batch are sold out. So they'll replenish the stocks at some point, I'm sure. So the response has been amazing, John, which is brilliant. Great.
Well, hopefully they'll sell a few pianos as well, because that was a beautiful piano. And I say, as soon as I I saw the video when you sent and said, "Hey, Jan, you might like this." I like it a great deal. Now, let's dig into you and your music, because
Okay.
I still call you young, although before we got to on air today, you did confide that you're getting a little older. Let's just say that. But you actually started out pretty early, because I think you've been performing from like mid-teens. Is that right?
And then like performing is probably putting it in very fancy terms. I mean, I studied music for 15 years in the Clondalkin School of Music. And when I was about 15 or 16, I summed up the courage to go busking in Dublin, which is kind of like a rite of passage for a lot of songwriters in Ireland, to go out into Temple Bar or Grafton Street. And I went to the Square in Temple Bar when I was 15 during the summer, and I would save up money, and whatever money I would make from busking, I would go to Freebird Records and buy like a Beatles CD, or like a Randy Newman record, or Ray Charles or something. And so part of my education on the street as a performer coincided with my musical education, which was just making enough money to buy a record,
Yeah. Well, certainly Ireland is obviously a very romantic country. The music, the hospitality is second to none, and it sounds somewhat idyllic that to be there. I think talking of busking, I think did you open for Glenn Hansard before? Is that right? Did I hear that?
Yeah. Well, so in 2013, Glenn was, as a lot of people know, Glenn was involved in Once, the movie that was released in 2007. Subsequently, he won an Oscar for Best Song. And so that movie got made into sort of a Broadway feature, and then later on the West End. And then it came to Ireland, which the European premiere took place in the Gaiety Theatre in Dublin. And myself and Evan Walsh, who was my busking comrade at that time, we played together, and we did support for that evening. So yeah, there's a bit, like you say, there is a romanticism in there, in Dublin especially, and I was very fortunate in my busking year to experience that.
No, that's great. Well, I was a big fan of the Frames back in the day, so it's one of my favorite live albums was by the Frames. So it's nice to be able to chat with someone from Ireland as well. Now, you released your first EP in 2014. That was Endless Summer. You landed on my radar with A Voice of the Urban Darlings. I think that was 2016, right?
That's right, yeah.
And that album that album went out on BO Records, right, in Ireland, and that is Moya Brennan from Clannad's label.
Yeah, Moya. So I had been in bands, Jan, in college. I was in a band called Shiloh Palace, and we had went through a couple of different lineup changes, and like all college bands, the vigor or the zest for being in the band kind of fizzles out once you leave college. And so I think today I'm the only one, with the exception of my drummer David Kozak, or the drummer in the band Shiloh Palace, who's still in the music business from that ever-changing lineup. And so in 2014, I was a student music teacher, and one of my colleagues, one of my good friends, Kyle Roach, and he was studying sound engineering in Maynooth University, and he had said to me, look, I'd love the experience of just being on the road with the musician and doing sound with you. And I said, well, look, because he could drive and I couldn't, I was like, I can take more gigs if I have someone who can drive. So it would be a huge help. So we kind of put our heads together, and I said, look, we'll do this many gigs in this amount of time, but really what I wanted to do was put out an EP or some kind of release. So in the time that he was studying, he was asking his lecturers, how do I do this? And what's the best way to record an acoustic guitar? And with a piano, is it best to go MIDI, DI, or, all this kind of stuff. So at the tail end of August of 2014, we used the School of Music where I studied for 15 years, and now me and Kyle were teaching, as kind of a makeshift recording studio. And so we recorded Your Endless Slumber there, all 5 tracks, over the space of about a week. And I mean, by that point, we had been going up and down the country playing weddings, 60th birthday parties, private functions, gigs in wine cellars, and everywhere we go, we didn't have a record. So it was like this phantom record of, we don't have it made yet, it's not recorded, it hasn't even been written, but we're going to release it at the end of the year. And if you could support me, I'd really appreciate it. And so in that September the 22nd, it went live everywhere. But within the first day or first 2 days, it got to #1 in the Irish charts. And from that point, I think, like kind of what you said, I came up on your radar with my next album. Beyond that point, I think that's where, you know, I was this kind of obscure guy in different lineups of bands. And then beyond that point, I became sort of, I won't say established as a solo artist, but people knew me then as a solo artist, if that makes sense.
Wait, no, and you know, I'm some of the songs from the A Voice for the Urban Darlings album. I mean, I loved Good Morning Stephanie's one of my favorite songs, and then Beautiful Loving You. I'm curious about the songwriting thing. I want to dig into that because it seems like you have several styles of songwriting. You have the ballad style that really, you know, works well, you know, playing at the piano, but you also do this upbeat style as well. Can you talk a little bit about songwriting? Because I think you've been writing for a long time. I mean, we mentioned, I think you were first performing at 14, and you know, you started to think about writing a lot earlier than that. So tell us a little bit about your songwriting style.
When you say about some of the more up-tempo stuff, and there were songs on that record like Rolling River and Good Morning Stephanie, where there's a very band-oriented feel. But that record was recorded with just myself and Adam Walsh, who's one of my best friends and an amazing producer. And it's just the two of us. Now, you'd never think it, but I think because I had been in bands for so many years, my mind is orientated to that. Bass, drums, 2 guitar, keyboard. And so when you hear songs like Good Morning Stephanie and Rolling River and Honeybee, there's a band. So I think, depending on what your experience has been, if I had been like a solo artist my whole performing career, I would write with just myself in mind. Whereas I'd been writing with a bassist, a drummer, a keyboardist, a fiddle player in mind for so long that you're writing parts. And even with some of the introductions, like with Good Morning Stephanie, I would have the basis of the song, and then I would say to Adam, okay, I want to put like Good Morning Stephanie has an shala walla walla 3-part harmony in the intro, the chorus, and the outro, which someone said to me recently is like Neil Sedaka influence. And I love Neil Sedaka's music, but it's funny how things that influence you in your teens and just presently and sort of peripherally, how that translates in the music. Because I certainly didn't set out to say, okay, this portion of the record is going to sound like Bob Dylan in the 60s, and this is going to sound like Adam Ant, or this is going to, you know what I mean? It wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't like that. But I think, as people say, you've got your whole life to make your first record, and then there's the notion of the difficult second record. So I think I was just at that point where I was trying to fit as many influences and as many styles into it as possible.
And that actually comes through, because when I was listening to it, it's like, you know, it really was a showcase for the abilities of the artist, which is exciting. I'm curious about the guitar versus piano. Did you start out on guitar or did you start out on piano?
Like I studied in the Clondalkin School of Music under Peter Stanton, and he was chief of operations there. He was just the sole guy running the joint. I mean, it was set up in 1995 by he and his brother Paul, or he and his brother Pat. I would be killed for getting any of these facts wrong. But when I went to, first of all, it was just guitar. And then at some point after about 4 or 5 years, I had an interest in the piano. And he said, well, I'm not going to make your mother pay for additional lessons. So he said, you can sit in on any piano lessons I teach, and what you pick up, you pick up. And at the end, I'll give you the option to ask some questions. But we're not going to do formal training, because I'm not going to charge your mother for like both guitar and piano, which my poor mother would have been extortionate to ask her to pay it. So he was great to me in that sense. And that went far beyond just piano and guitar. He would, when I would arrive to lessons, if I was early, there would be like an Engelbert Humperdinck record on, or Fats Waller. And he'd say, can you pick out the chord? And I'd be like, it's a C chord. He said, it's a C, but what kind of C? And I'd be like, it's a C dominant 7, or it's a C half diminished. So I was very fortunate that I had a phenomenal teacher. So that certainly helped.
So when the Thornton Pianos gig came up, I'm just curious as to, you know, I mean, we're going to dig into this new EP in a second, but I really love the sound of you and that piano. I mean, there is almost a timeless quality with Your Little Corner of the Moon. I mean, which, you know, really drew me in. I mean, I mentioned before, I'm a real fan of that style of singer-songwriter. But I'm just curious as to, you know, I was listening to the song that we're going to play at the end of this interview, Since Baby Went Away, which also exists in a band form, I guess, on A Voice for the Urban Darlings. I'm just curious as to where you stand on the guitar versus piano scenario.
If I could, like, it's one of my great regrets, Jan, that I didn't push my teacher Peter to teach me how to play piano in a classical sense, because a lot of my rudiments are not self-taught, but like the way I understand them to be. So I don't view myself as a terribly competent piano player. I understand, like, there's no key that I can't play in, but in terms of being showy, I would be reasonably limited compared to the guitar. Like, I can do much more on the guitar, but I understand all of the rudiments and rules with regard to piano. But if I had my choice, I would just be piano.
Yeah. So the new EP is entitled The 1992 Tapes. Where did that title come from?
So I was born in 1992. I turned 29 in the middle of February of this year. And for every record that I ever made, I would have these demos. I used to have an old cassette recorder that belonged to my mother. It was like an old dictaphone. And of any tapes that I would make, I would call them like the Urban Darlings tapes or the Endless Slumber tapes. And in 2018, I had set out to make my second full-length record, which was to be called 1992. And for about a year, Jan, I had, like, in my phone, volumes and volumes. The 1992 series, volume 1, volume 2, volume 6. And so so Your Endless Slumber and A Voice for the Urban Darlings both reached #1 when they came out. In 2016, Christmas 2016-17, I brought out a single with my record label called My Little Sweetheart and Me, and it got to #5 in the charts. And some woebegone Irish blogger wrote, Gavin fails to secure his third #1 with My Little Sweetheart and Me and all this kind of stuff. And I just recoiled in horror, because I thought, I never got into this. Like, I'm an alternative artist as far as I'd be concerned. Like, I'm not a top 15, chart artist. And so the charts meant nothing to me. It's great when you get some push from and support from people, but that wasn't my goal. And so for 2 years, I was on kind of a semi-promotional tour to push this record, like up and around Ireland, playing festivals and doing interviews. And I just wanted to move on to the next thing, because in my mind, I'm waiting for that question to come where they say, and unfortunately, that third release just didn't hit #1. And I was terrified by the idea. And I remember in the beginning of 2019, in January, just right into the new year, end of 2018, I was out with another amazing artist, a dear friend of mine, Kat Lundy. And she said to me, I remember over a drink, she said to me, I feel like you have to be so many people for so many people that you never get to be yourself for you. And sometimes people can put it really simply to you and it just resonates perfectly. And I never forgot that. And I was like, okay, this whole 1992 project needs to get shelved, because I felt that some of the ideas in the demos were much better than what I was going to put out on the record. And so with this EP, this was just me saying, I'm going to go in, sit at the piano, play what comes to mind and release it, and not give a thought to deeply intricate production techniques or nothing, and then just let it happen, let it go out to the world.
Yeah. Well, it sounds what I've heard so far sounds great. I'm looking forward to the rest. Now, you're working on new stuff as well, though. I think that you do a bit of co-writing. Is that right?
At the beginning of lockdown last year, I was contacted by Charlie McGettigan, and anyone who's familiar with Charlie's work will probably know him best for Rock and Roll Kids. He and Paul Harrington in 1994 won the Eurovision with Rock and Roll Kids. And Charlie is hugely revered in Ireland. And I remember when I brought out my first record, you were kind enough to play, as you mentioned, Good Morning Stephanie and Loving You a number of times on your show. And Charlie has a radio station. Well, he has a show on Shannonside FM, and he had played a couple of the tracks. So he would have been familiar with my work for a couple of years. And he just sent me a message and he said, if you'd like to do some co-writing, that'd be brilliant. I'd be really on board for that. And so every week we've written 2. So since last April, it'll be a year next week, we have recorded 2 songs a week every week. Written 2 songs a week every week.
No, that's cool. So those tracks will eventually come out in some form then, or is that the plan?
Yeah, I'd love to do a record, the two of us, you know, and kind of, he's in his 70s now and I'm in the last year of my 20s, and I feel like not a coming of age record, but sort of that two ends of the spectrum, you know, two different perspectives of songwriters would be really cool to do. And I know he's on board for it. And we've amassed about 50 or 60 songs. So it would just be a question of weaning out what works the best and what songs really shine the most, and then just release them. So I push him all the time, and I'm like, come on, let's just decide on a date and let's get it out there. So I definitely in 2021, we'll bring out something together.
No, that is very cool. I do want to put a shout out to your SoundCloud. Now, I'm a big SoundCloud fan. They're actually one of the music networks that's actually starting to try and pay artists much more fairly for their music. Bandcamp, certainly leaders in that regard. But SoundCloud are also really trying to make some changes. But you put out some, I think, home demos, the Flamingo Variations Home Recordings Volume 1. So if you want to check out more of Colm Gavin's music, check him out on SoundCloud, because there's a whole bunch of songs that I don't think have actually been fully recorded yet, right? They're still at the demo stage, that you get a little bit of flavor. You know, it's interesting you mentioned Eurovision earlier, because I could see, you know, with the breadth of your style, that I could see that you eventually could end up writing something that might appeal to someone who, you know, who's trying to move forward. I don't know if you would ever do that yourself, but trying to move forward on Eurovision. Kind of interesting thought.
Yeah, I'd be wide open to it. I mean, at the moment, there's a lot. I do a lot of writing for country artists in Ireland, and what's really interesting is the country scene in North America is very much established, and it, you know, it has its mainstay people. And when you think of Ireland, you don't necessarily think country music, especially not American country music, but we have some staggeringly gifted performers, like, and you know, who, if you weren't interested in country music, it maybe wouldn't jump out at you. But I have had the pleasure over the past couple of months of working with some amazingly gifted, I'm writing some songs for amazingly gifted Irish country artists, and hopefully they'll have releases with some of my songs this year too. So it's kind of, it's interesting in the sense that songs of mine will now find lives without me performing them, you know. And I think as a songwriter, that always has to be the main prerogative. It isn't just about you performing the songs, it's the life that the song has beyond you. Because when people are crowded in a bar at 3:00 in the morning singing Stand By Me, they're not necessarily thinking of who wrote the song. No. It's the song that carries the weight, you know what I mean? And so I love that idea, and I'm happy for the songs to do well in whatever medium that they find.
Well, certainly you're a great songwriter, and I look forward to hearing what happens next. The new EP is entitled The 1992 Tapes. It's piano-driven, singer-songwriter, beautiful songs. We're going to hear another one from Colm Gavin in a few seconds. If you want to learn more about his music, you can find him on Facebook at Colm Gavin Official. If you go to our website, folkrootsradio.com, you'll be able to check out this interview again, and we'll also have it going out on Folk Roots Radio as the syndicated radio show as well. So lots going on from that point of view. It's been great to have you join us today. We're going to finish with Since Baby Went Away. Now, that was one of the songs that also appeared on A Voice for the Urban Darlings as well. Can you tell us anything else about this song? I mean, it's obviously you're going to be playing one of the beautiful pianos at Thornton Pianos in this video. Anything else you want to share with us?
I suppose just the comparison between the two. When I recorded it for A Voice for the Urban Darlings, it was very, I won't say thrashy, but the way I approached it was very John Lennon, rock and roll vocal-esque. And, you know, the way we had done the musical arrangement was very much more for a, sort of a big band style. And I felt that the song had a sentiment that would have worked just as well in a more tender approach. And so that's why when I had the opportunity to do it again, and to sort of not to rewrite it, but just restructure it slightly, I jumped on it.
No, well, it's certainly listening to both versions side by side, that really comes through. And I think, you know, you and the piano really worked well for me. Absolutely. Colm Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us today. Remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified for all our upcoming interviews. We're going to finish with Colm Gavin And since Baby went away from his forthcoming EP, it's entitled the 1992 Sessions. I note the 1992 tapes, and it arrives later this year. And Colm, it's been an absolute pleasure. Take
Jan,
care.
thank you for having me, and thank you for all you do for music. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Cold clay, crooked alleys and hallways, always. Tomorrow feels like yesterday, the latest trick or runaway. It's all the same since Baby went away. Blue town, the lights are on but the shutter's down. Everyone's clown, a party piece, a hand-me-down, and all I hear is the bitter sound of an empty bed now that Baby's not around. They ask me how I'm feeling, yeah, but it's too soon to know. It seems she's always dressed up and I got no place to go. I wanna call this quits and just admit what we both know, but she's all I've ever wanted, and I love her so. One day I'll find the words I need to say. Each night I pray we'll meet again on some sunny day. For now it seems all I ever say is it ain't the same since Baby went away. No, it ain't the same since Baby went away.
That was the wonderful Colm Gavin. Wasn't that amazing? Absolutely fabulous Irish singer-songwriter. I will be bringing that interview to Folk Roots Radio. It'll be on the website and also going out to our syndicated radio stations. Remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to check out more of the interviews we have coming up. And I'd love to hear from you. You can get hold of me through the website or on social media as well. So take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.